Good evening and welcome to Tete-a-Tete, the Opera Festival's first interactive broadcast from the Cockpit Theatre. My name is Bill Banks-Jones. I'm Artistic Director of Tete-a-Tete. I'm a white man in my 50s wearing glasses and headphones and one too many chins after too much food in lockdown. I've got a black top. I'm on a grey-green leather sofa with lots of nice pot plants and some books beside me. And I'm here to welcome you to this interactive broadcast, to say a couple of things before we start, and then after we've watched the film, I'll introduce the panelists. The things to say at the beginning are really, we've all had a hell of a year, every single one of us, whatever we do. For our artists, it's been the most extraordinary year, a mixture of the terrifying collapse of our industry combined with the great creativity of everybody running to catch up all the time and to just reinvent our shows. The bridge between breaths has been incredibly creative. It's only weeks ago we were talking about doing it in the theatre. This is a work in progress piece that is building up to something more in a year or two once we return to normal performance. It's an extraordinary piece of work. It'll speak for itself and you can talk about it afterwards. It would be great to have in mind that we charged a very modest admission price because we hope that you'll enjoy the show and make huge donations to the artists who made the piece. The other thing to ask you now is we're working with the Paul Hamlin Foundation, exploring ways to reopen theatre as we come back to performing. As you'll see in this, people are performing together in the studio and we filmed it to broadcast to you. And also we're looking at how to perform live. So when we send you feedback, forms, we'd love to hear what you thought. Anyway, quite enough of me. Let's take a look at the bridge between breaths.
And I'm one of the co-directors.
Hi, I'm Stevie and I am a conductor and music director for this week's workshops.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Lambert and I am a visual artist.
Hi, my name's Joanne. I'm the sopranos playing the spirit. I co-produced this show with Matilda and I am co-company director of FormidAbility.
Hi there, I'm Ron Sam. I'm a tenor and I'm singing the role of Perrault in this lovely opera.
Hello, I'm James Douglas. I'm playing cello this week.
Hi, I'm Toria. I am one of the co-directors of the piece.
So I started FormidAbility last year with Holly Matheson with the idea that opera could reach so many more people, just the visceral emotion and energy in opera could, if on stage and if everyone working on the opera was a much better representation of the audiences. I think the statistic is about 20% of the UK population identifies disabled, but you don't see 20% of people on opera stages with a disability. And so why not? There's talent out there. There's so much talent, there's so much skill, so much artistry that just seems to not get through. So our idea was to have a company where we can have a healthy mix of disabled and non-disabled professional artists creating work of a really high caliber, where we aim to make every show as accessible as we possibly can. So we don't have just the one show in the run that is audio described, but we've put audio description into every show. We have accessibility for deaf audiences in every show. Excuse me. And making that accessibility artistic and creative in its own right, so that anybody in the audience will find it adds to their experience and it actually brings people together rather than having this kind of them and us over the audio descriptions just for the blind person. Well, why not? If you are sighted and there are spare audio description headsets available before the show that haven't been needed by a visually impaired persons, why not pick one up and experience the show in a different way?
Someone is dead.
Time is
piece is fascinating. It's a very, very important bit of black history, and I think that we have the opportunity here to tell a story that not many people really know about, all based on truth. And I think my dream would be to bring this piece to the biggest selection of people that we can, the biggest cross-section of society.
I would love this piece to resonate with all people that see it. And in some way, after seeing it, to find out more about the history of the slave trade, the history of the slave masters, the situations that people found themselves in and their headspaces, and see how, if it correlates or has anything with what we are and what we do today.
I was speaking to Hafsa, the writer of this piece, about this, and she said that she wanted the piece to feel like the fact that we're all in this liminal space between the inhale and the exhale at all times, both as people and societally, and that it's your privilege in different spaces that allows you to take that breath in peace. And she's expressed that poetically and literally in both how she tells a story and the story she's telling, and I think I want to tell that too, and I think we've had an amazing team that's also wanted to share that thought, that feeling, and also the specific knowledge of this history that is so often hidden or not even hidden but just falsely told.
What kind of haunting has reached me up here? The ringing of bells I've heard all these years. I swallow this poison to sweeten my senses, or just to fill this ache in my chest. My heart is so heavy, I feel I can't breathe. This chasm as vast as the mountain on Nevis.
What has surprised me this week? The speed with which the collaborative kind of skills can come back to all of us involved. For a lot of people, this is the first thing we've done since lockdown, and I think that whether it's in a theatre or on the street, in a market, I think all different kinds of places would have value and would bring something different. But I think the main thing is that the story is told.
Research and development is so useful because you can research and develop things. That's a silly answer, isn't it? But like, sometimes in opera, just for lack of time, and rehearsal becomes about kind of practicing things and getting the thing that you have right rather than making the thing better and richer. What it's really done is allow everybody. I'm going to forget who I'm quoting, but there's a quote about like diversity is who is in the room and inclusion is who has influence in the room. And just as like a general principle, it's great when all of the different artists in a room affect like the creative output, because like why wouldn't you want that? But it seems so particularly important with this show, and that this has given that space rather than everybody sort of just turns up and does their job and goes away again.
I love working with new people because you're always surprised in this business, but especially now, I think we're all in this weird place, and it surprised me how fascinating it is watching someone paint. Absolutely fascinating. There's that phrase, you're watching paint dry. Not gonna lie, really interesting, would recommend. What else has surprised me? People's generosity and empathy and compassion in learning about things they didn't know about, or have been told otherwise about, and when given the space, when given the opportunity to learn, how willing people are to share experiences with each other.
This week has made me think more about seeing the world through other people's eyes. I always wanted to anyway, but hearing people's experiences, I didn't know until the piece was being written about the bridge in Bristol named after him. As I walk around London and you look at these big, beautiful buildings and you think, I wonder where the money came from.
What has surprised me this week has been how I've been able to create an art piece in such a short period of time. It has definitely been a challenge to my normal working process, but a challenge that I have definitely accepted and think is going well. Another thing that I've learnt this week is to continue to be more compassionate and compassionate. And I didn't think that was possible for me, because I'm like this person that, wears my heart on my sleeve, and I'm like, oh, let me give you a hug, even though we can't do that during COVID. But like, just some of the conversations has allowed me to kind of dig deeper into like just being more compassionate, more open, and more willing to converse about things that are challenging.
I learned a lot about the story of Perrault and the story of Bristol and the story of the history of that city, which hitherto had been sort of just missed from my education. And I think it's quite embarrassing that I didn't know that. So I think I'm glad that I've been opened up. My world has been opened up to actually read more about this and discover more about this period of history, which I woefully didn't know enough about. I'd like to describe this show in 3 words. My 3 words are going to be hard-hitting drama.
Hello, I'm Gareth Churchill, and I'm the composer of the British Express. I think I'd like this piece to show that contemporary opera can be a very inclusive environment, people from all backgrounds and all walks of life. In this way, I think I would like it to be like a sort of stepping stone within what I see as the changing face of opera, towards a place of equality, regardless of race, sexuality, disability, or gender. I feel like this is starting to happen in opera, and I'd like this piece to be seen as a stepping stone towards a more inclusive world, musical theatre and opera. And so in this way, I think it's for everyone, and I would like it to speak to everyone. And because I think it's a piece for traditional performance spaces of opera through to in public. It's an extremely small work, 2 singers and 2 instrumentalists, so it's very portable and can really be performed anywhere at all, I think. And on the harbour front in Bristol, it's very exciting. That's where it's set, of course. My process as a composer is rooted in the words. So, for example, in this piece, it uses the word breath or breathe quite frequently, and so I've taken the musical notes from that word, namely B, Re, A, and T. And as a result, this piece it's become a study of the sort of minor third and the perfect fifth. And that's reflected very much in the sound of the book and its harmonic DNA.
I think it's very important to have something like this R&D, or research and develop, because you discover so much more. Especially, we've had 2 lovely directors who are willing to listen and willing to be flexible. And in that flexibility and that atmosphere of allowance, yeah, we were able to say what we feel. Everyone was said what we feel, because you usually just hear from a director and a conductor. Here we were listening to the players who were playing. We listened to the visual artists, and of course the directors and the conductor. And I think that's really important. That's the way forward. If we're going to bring opera into the 21st century, we have to learn to include everyone, and that means everyone included, everyone included.
We know that unless we confront our painful history, not to say that we have to do it all the time, but unless we do, then things won't get better. They won't improve. And I think this is an opportunity to do that. I think it's important that we do that. The point of the arts, the point of music and opera and theatre is to communicate something, is to share something with a group of people who may not have known or felt that before. And I think we have to take that opportunity to share something important and fun and beautiful and interesting, but something important as well, because the world is really hard sometimes. We might as well try and make it better. Dangers, always that it's exposing, and it can make you feel vulnerable, and things can come up that are bad, like as in it can make people feel uncomfortable. It can be a challenge to tell those stories with real truth, with real accuracy. But it's possible to just, especially when you've got time, which is a scarcity and a rarity, but to avoid those dangers and make something amazing.
Breath, mountain on Nevis.
One sentence it took. And just like that, she was gone.
These words in my mouth, you foreign and distant, be the chest bone and heart we meet. Our breath became one, no words were needed. This hole in my chest I now fill as I like. Matilda, my love, is it you I hear? A bellman is ringing down in the square. A great crowd has gathered. This city pays for the blood of a black girl. A guinea reward to find her alive. Beasts are out hunting to drag her to master. Slave ships waiting to swallow her whole. Run for your freedom, may it taste sweet. The bellman pays you at 12 years of age. Hide where you can, away from this bondage, or there'll be a boot on your neck for the rest of your days. It isn't freedom, caught between the dead and the breathing. Matilda, forgive me. What use was this life? our daughter in Nevis. Merchant falters standing between, dictating who lives and who drowns in the sea. What kind of father could I be for a princess? A bellman is ringing. Sugar has rotted the heart of this land. Girl, keep running. Sickness has spread. Reward for a guinea. None if you're dead. Keep running. The people are searching. I search for myself. The vultures are circling. Someone is dead. This hole in my chest. I hear it again. The bells are ringing. A great crowd has gathered. They've caught the girl. Wretched and shivering, she's begging for mercy. She's dragged to the king. A bellman is crying. Or is it he? My heart suspended. Is that my daughter I see? A great crowd has gathered. She just wants to be free. Between the chest bone and the heart, we promised to meet. Matilda, it hurts. To breathe. I cannot breathe.
Wow, well, that's certainly packed a punch, and There's lots to unpack in that. Now we move anyway on to the interactive bit of our broadcast. This is where we'll welcome questions from any of you for our panel. If you'd like to ask anything, just tap it into the chat and it magically appears on a screen in front of me and can be passed around the panelists. And we should introduce our panelists. I should remind myself, I can't quite see it actually, but the first person to introduce you won't see is Lindsay Bramley, friend to many of us, who's valiantly come in to do the captioning for us. And a note for myself and everybody else who's speaking is to give her a chance to keep up and not talk too fast. But first, let's say hello to our panel. So we have Joanne Roughton-Arnold, whose dream this is. Hello, Joanne.
Hello.
Good, we can hear you. Let's say hello to the rest of you. Gareth Churchill, your composer. Hooray, hello. And we should have Stevie Higgins, your conductor. Hi, Stevie. And finally, let's say hello to Toria Banks. We couldn't find you at the beginning, Toria. Are you here now? Oh dear, have we lost Toria? Never mind, let's persevere with, oh hooray, we have you, great. I don't know what happened to you at the beginning, Toria, but we've got you now. Okay, well, the first thing that I'd like to do is hand over to Joanne. And I think you want to say just a little bit about what might happen to donations. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very much, Bill. So you have been watching a healthy mix of disabled and non-disabled professional artists proudly creating new and powerful work and challenging perceptions of inclusion in the arts. The story, the history that is being told through the bridge between breaths needs to be seen and heard by as wide an audience as possible. We hope that by telling the story, by opening minds and sparking conversations, we might play a small role in creating positive change. We believe passionately that every performance should be as accessible as possible to as wide an audience as possible, and that this accessibility should be placed at the heart of the creative process, not tacked onto the periphery. We want to give accessibility artistic value of its own, reflecting the energy and emotion of the story being told on stage and adding to the experience of the whole audience, both disabled and non-disabled. All this takes time and resources to achieve, but is worth every second and every penny. So, if you feel moved to support our work and to help us smash down barriers both on and off stage, we would be hugely grateful. All donations will go towards the next stage of development of the bridge between breaths, expanding on lessons learned in last week's research and development and adding further creative accessibility as we build the full production of the complete work. Thank you so much. Keep in touch and visit us at www.formidability.org. And now, ask us lots of questions.
Yeah, well, I think a first question, which is really begging to be asked, is you've got so much going into that. There's so much of Colston and Black Lives Matter and everything you've just said about access and the different inputs. And yet you've managed to make a piece that speaks so clearly and naturally. It's so uncluttered. I'd love to know, starting with Joanne, as you're the driver, how you would manage that.
I would have to say by having the most incredible team of people that collaborated, gelled, trusted each other. I think that's the answer from me anyway.
Well, maybe let's hear from your team of people.
Please.
Gareth, once you get the project and the words, it goes to you, doesn't it? And how was it for you?
That's right, yes. Am I on? Yes, that's right. The words came to me, and I think I read them probably for a week or so. I just lived with them and lived in that story and got to know it. And because I'm from Somerset originally, I know the bridge in Bristol. I know the harbour front there a little. But it's mostly sort of bars and nightclubs these days. It's an area I've known in my youth, I suppose. And I got to know the words, and then I looked a little at traditional Caribbean music, and I think I worked a great deal in very small forms anyway, so 2 instruments was almost ideal for me.
Yeah, well, it certainly takes less time. And then once you've made a score, it begins, doesn't it, with Stevie, who's got to get the notes into the singers and so forth. How did you get on?
It was remarkably, I'm not going to say easy, because new music is never easy to assimilate quickly, because we only really had 4 or 5 days. But what was wonderful for me was the clarity and the succinctness of both Gareth's score, but even more importantly to me, the fantastic work from Hafsa, our librettist. It's so, I don't know how she managed to be so poetic and yet so clear in her narrative at the same time. I don't know if you found that, Gareth, but there was so much, there's a lot of beauty in the words, but also the essential story was never obfuscated by that poetic beauty. So my starting point, as always, is from the words and the music, and then just working out the speed and the pacing of this piece. You know, when did it need to sit back? When did it need to move forwards? When did we need big energy? And being able to shape that and sculpt that in the rehearsal room with these very willing and very responsive 4 musicians and singers that we had was my job with the week, and they made it very easy for me.
Yeah, it seems it. And then let's move to Toria, co-directing this. You've got all this going already. How was it for you? Are you on
Hi.
mute? Oh, there we go.
Am I there? It was really great. It felt like my role was like, by the time we got into the room, my role had really just been having fantastic conversations with Hafsa, with Simone, with Tiffany, with Gareth, and just that's just such a fantastic part of the job, to just facilitate people talking to each other and to learn about stuff, and to then just start to see how it might move forward and what the kind of other layers might be in the R&D. It's one of the most genuinely R&D-ish R&Ds I've ever been involved with, which is a really great thing.
I guess it's even though it's a terrible moment, as I said at the beginning, for all of us in the arts, it is a moment of profound change. And that is the time at which extraordinary things can happen. But anyway, you don't need to hear from me. We've got questions flying in. One from Deborah, which has disappeared off my screen, but which I think was, where do you see the R&D going? Where's it leading to? Well, I think we take that back to Joanne. Oh, good, I can see it. What is the vision for the full-length opera in terms of length and scope? That was her precise question. So, Joanne.
Well, originally we asked Gareth and Hafsa to create a piece that was somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes. But there's flexibility in that, so it might end up a little longer. Who knows? It's going to be 3 acts, and the first act, as you just saw, set in 18th century Bristol, but then the other 2 acts in the here in the modern day, and playing with different perspectives on things, the way you can have the same events and the different people's different opposing views about what's happening. And we've been exploring Hafsa's libretto as a draft libretto for Act 2 last week, and it's really powerful, really, really exciting.
It's hard, really hard to imagine how you can move on from those I Can't Breathe. They were extraordinary.
Yeah.
Let's keep going through the questions, because they're hearing appearing at a great pace. Sophia, what are some of the things you learned about the piece in your R&D process? I think we should take that straight to Gareth. There's nothing like being the person who wrote something, seeing it go on its feet. What did you find out about what you'd written?
Sorry, can I get you to repeat that, Bill? I was just messaging Jo privately to let her know that I think Hafsa has joined the chat, so we should absolutely hear from her as well.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome, Hafsa. Can we let her in? Is she there? Hello.
Hi,
just unmute myself. Hello.
Have you been with us all the way along, Hafsa?
I have, yes, and that was the first time that I had watched the first act all the way through, and it was really powerful, and it's just an incredible team. And I'm really honoured, actually, to see the whole piece together with yourselves as well.
Well, you're the person in the hot seat to ask what you learned about the piece in your R&D process, aren't you? Because you're the other author. What have you found out about what you made?
I found out that it's, I mean, I knew this anyway, but it's a very sensitive topic. And I'm very aware of how this story is presented. I'm very aware that I am a South Asian Muslim female writing this story, but it feels important. It feels that this is an opportunity for the world of opera to be both museum and classroom. I feel like a lot can be learned, and if this starts conversations with people, then that's what we want.
Wow, that's an amazing way to look at it, museum and classroom. And yeah, well, as I say, at this time of change, we've got a lot to learn from each other. A question from Liz Lane for Gareth. Congratulations, Gareth and everyone. How was your personal experience of Bristol and the harbour area influencing this fantastic project?
Thanks, Liz, and good evening. So, to mention, Liz Lane is a fellow Bristolian of sorts, and personal professional colleague by the University of Cardiff and Bristol. I think the kind of the very multicultural nature of the harbour area, and having heard steel drums and that sort of thing in there, and kind of experienced traditional Caribbean music in that area, led me to listen to a lot of that. And in the ensemble I had available, that translated in my mind to the sort of pizzicato cello, that is the plucked cello strings. It's not a very literal translation. It sounds not a great deal like steel drums, but that for me is where that sort of rhythmic language ended up.
And here's a fresh question from Tanya Holland. I'm interested in the process. How long did it take to get to this point? And were there any redirections, cul-de-sacs and aha moments? I think it was probably definitely Stevie and Toria's turn to tell us a little bit about that. How was it, Stevie, manhandling this material?
It was great, as I say, because I think a lot of the hard work seemed to have been done by the time that I got my score plonked through the letterbox. So for me, it was literally the assembling of it, but I'm not sure how long it took. I think you'll have to ask the librettist and the composer how long the process was to get to that lovely phase of getting the music through the mail. But Toria, you may have you've been part of the project for slightly longer than I have, so maybe you have a bit more of an insight into that.
Certainly not all the way back to the beginning of the project, so I'm happy for someone else to speak about its origins. I think we had Hafsa and I and Simone had some really great conversations that we managed, and I'm really grateful to Gareth for his patience, actually, because the libretto was changing quite a lot quite late in the day before the R&D process, and he was a model of patience and flexibility in kind of accommodating those changes. But it was really great to have those questions. It's quite hard to get to a finished act one of something as a writer, and I'm very aware of Hafsa's process here without knowing where you're going with Act 2 and Act 3. And I think Hafsa did have an idea of that, but I think that developed in some conversations that we had, and that helped kind of refine things. And then again in the R&D, we spent a day specifically looking at the kind of dramaturgy of the show and looking at some new text that I literally got in an Uber to the rehearsal room on Wednesday lunchtime, like, which we were then able to look at the same day, that again has kind of shaped the sense of where it's going. So that feels like it's been an ongoing, like, it's not really a week, it's sort of since May, that kind of shaping of text and where we might go. In terms of blind alleys, I mean, this is a really difficult subject, and I think some very specific things came up. The new text that I got in the cab was a scene in which Joanne would be playing the wife of Pinny, who is the slave master who owns Perot. Not that that's, you know, morally possible, but his wife becomes a character, and that had specifically come out of conversations about the cast that we have, and about Joanne's role in the project as a white woman, and the perspective of white voices, which comes through in the text that's currently the middle act of the show, which is contemporary, which reflects a lot of the kind of media voices around Colston's statue and some of the kind of limitations of people's perspectives on that. And so, yeah, it does feel like those questions have difficult questions, difficult conversations, but really positive outcomes, actually, where like anything that we thought potentially was going to be a roadblock has turned into something really fascinating, because we're all really invested in addressing these subjects in a really honest way.
Well, I think that, Toria, is the kind of shape of the entire year, really, certainly this festival. I mean, I know at the very beginning of the process, there was Joanne and me, wasn't there? We shared a lot. And the merely getting to be able to do all this and present it in this way has been like a roller coaster in 4 dimensions, really. I'm the roller coaster cliche. The conversations we've had and the different turns this might have taken, Joanne, are extraordinary, aren't they? I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Sure, it's been a phenomenal journey is such a cliche, but you know, roller coaster ride. Glad to be holding on to the handles. When FormidAbility was awarded the Arts Council COVID emergency grant, and so we wanted to commission a new work as part of that, and I knew I wanted to work with Gareth and Hafsa, so I got in touch with Hafsa and said, how about writing a piece for us, this idea of a small scale work centered around something that resonates with what we were going through during lockdown, during the pandemic, but I left it really open. I said, not something obvious, not about 2 people in lockdown, because that would be really dull. So I let Hafsa take time and space and thinking, and she played with lots of ideas. And maybe I should head over to Hafsa to tell us what those ideas were.
So originally, I think when Joe first asked me to write an opera, or write the libretto for an opera that somehow kind of encapsulates what lockdown has meant for a lot of us, it initially was lots of vignettes together, lots and lots of vignettes of conversations that were happening around me. And that some of the concerns that I had and what the media was saying about COVID and the way that it was affecting communities, especially Black and Brown communities disproportionately. And there were lots of smaller sections that I had already began to write. And I had this moment where, when it came to shaping what this actual libretto would be, I had this moment where it suddenly became clear as day that that is the opera. Pierrot's story, set in the 18th century, is absolutely what this opera needs to be about, because it can talk about Britain's colonial past. It can talk about this legacy that we're quite reluctant to face. It can talk about history. It can talk about racism. It can talk about injustice. And it just felt right. I knew in my gut that it feels right to do. And it kind of spans from Pierrot's life all the way up to modern day. And I hope by Act 3 that that's done in a seamless way. But I think it was Toria was mentioning before that we seem to be in this liminal space between the inhale and the exhale. And in my language, the word for breath and the word for time is the same word. It's dam. And in Act 3, I feel like those two things come together.
Oh goodness, can't wait for Act 3. Am I right, Havsa, it's your first libretto?
Yes.
I've been in so many conversations and interviews and things with somebody doing their first libretto saying, gosh, it was amazing, I had no idea it'd be like that. You look like you knew exactly what you were doing and exactly what you needed to do. Did anything surprise you?
I'm so glad you're saying that, because I actually had so much anxiety writing. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. I just knew that I feel something greatly that connects with a lot of other people. And what is the most poetic way that I could say those things? And I think Toni Morrison, I remember when she wrote Beloved, she said something about guiding the readers safely through the story. And I feel like with this libretto, I felt the responsibility to do that in the same way, that these are really challenging topics and very triggering topics for a lot of people. How do we have these conversations in a way that they are met with open hearts and they connect us, because we are all connected by this breath, every single one of us. And if lockdown showed us anything, yes, there were lots of challenges, but there were also these beautiful moments of humanity and connection, and people becoming not strangers, but friends. You know, people knocking on doors and connecting in ways that, you know, we had never done before. And I felt like some of that has to be captured in this piece.
Oh, feels like a marvelous note to end on. We've got just a couple of minutes left, if that. It's important to say the recording will be available to all of you with tickets. You can come back and revisit this for 28 days on the Cockpit website. Also, things come up on my screen to donate, easydonate.org/bridge. Does that ring any bells, Joanne? Because I think we've also set up a national fundraising scheme donation page. Oh, it's the same one. Okay, so it's easydonate.org/bridge, or you can find the link on the Tete website or the Cockpit website that brought you here. And make sure to tell all your friends. I think that's been a fascinating just under an hour. Thank you all very much indeed.